Hello, my name is Brian, and today I'm going to show you a little bit about Japanese. I've been practicing Japanese for maybe 2 years now, but there's been plenty of days where I haven't done it, or days where I just did a few minutes or whatever. But lately, I've been spending a lot more time on it. Definitely wouldn't say I'm fluent or anything yet, but maybe approaching intermediate. And there's a lot of friends that I know. They're like, "Oh, that's cool. I want to learn Japanese too." And I know other people are interested, and I just love Japanese, so I figured I would just kind of go for the basics here, so that if you do want to start learning Japanese, you can get through these basics and get over that beginner hump as quickly as possible. So the Japanese actually based their writing system off the Chinese writing system. So there'll be a lot of similar characters of kanji characters. However, they'll have different meanings. So the writing system was based on Chinese characters, but it's not the same. So to start out, we have the three Japanese writing systems, and they all intertwine: hiragana, katakana, and kanji. Hiragana and katakana are pretty much the same, but they look different. Kanji is the more complex characters, where there's multiple strokes involved, and I would definitely say it's the hardest part of learning Japanese. And then you have Romaji, which you could kind of count and say it's the fourth writing system, but it's really just the romanized version of the Japanese letters, so that it looks like English words. So here we have a hiragana and katakana chart with Romaji. And if you take a look at the square that I highlighted in red here, we have the character ha. The green is the hiragana version. The symbol to the bottom left is the katakana version. And to the bottom right, we have the romaji, which is pretty much, you could use it as pronunciation, but it's not always accurate. So we have ha in hiragana, we have ha in katakana. And if you look at the rightmost column, you have the Japanese vowels, which, starting from the top going down, it is a, I, u, e, o. And looking at the rest of the columns, you have the consonants. So reading those from left column to right column, you have un, wa, wo. A lot of times that's pronounced just o as a particle marker. Ra, ri, ru, re, ro, ya, yu, yo, ma, mi, mu, me, mo, ha. A lot of the times it's a particle marker. Wa, hi, fu, he, ho, na, ni, nu, ne, no, ta, chi, tsu, te, to, sa, shi, su, se, so, ka, ki, ku, ke, ko. So these Japanese letters are syllables. They're not just one letter, they're two, like ha. And these different characters are combined to create certain words. And that is the majority of the syllables. However, there is 3 different variations you could have. If you look at the columns at the top, you will see H has 2 asterisks. T and S and K have 1 asterisk next to it. All 4 of those columns have Dakten versions. And the H can also have the Han Dakten version. So we'll go over those 2 different varieties, and then we'll go on to the third way we could have more Japanese syllables. So here we have the Han Dakten and the Dakten. We'll start with the former because the H column is the only column that has it. So you can see a small circle at the top right of each of the letters or characters. Ha becomes pa with the handakten. He becomes pi, and so on. For the dakten, it's pretty much the same positioning as the circle, but it looks like a sideways quotation mark. Ha becomes ba. He becomes bi. And then some of the different varieties you get with these are a little counterintuitive. If you go to the second column, the T, you have ta, which becomes da, and then you have chi, which you think would become di, but it's ji, as well as tsu becoming zu. So returning to our chart, we'll look at the third way that we could have more Japanese syllable, and that is via the Y column. In the column, you'll notice that there's only the three letters, the three characters, ya, yu, and yo. Well, we create the yun syllables via taking one of the characters from the I row, and then behind that character we put one of the Y column characters, and we make it about half the size. So here you could see the different yuns. The left graph we have the katakana, the right graph we have the hiragana. And if you take a look at that first combination there, you can see we combine ki and ya to become kya. The ki is placed first, and then the ya is placed next, but it's smaller so that you could tell that you want to change the syllable. We then have kyu, and then kyo. And then random fact, Ryu from Street Fighter gets his name spelling right here on the katakana, though technically there is another u that is added. That's why Ryu's name has that little dash above the u, because it's like two u's. So there we have our hiragana and katakana, our Japanese vowels and consonants, our dakten and handakten, and our yun. If you would like to download this chart, I'll put a link in the description. So moving on to the bulk of the Japanese writing system is the kanji. And here we have some examples of kanji. You can see the characters, some of them are a lot more complex, some of them a couple strokes. We have Japan as Nihon. We have Japanese people as Nihonjin, which is basically just adding the jin there. You have Japanese language, adding the go to Nihon, so Nihongo. Mountain, Yama, Kawa, Tayo, Ame, Kumori, Mizu, Hi, Gohan, Sakana, Sushi, Otoko, Josei, Inu, Jitensha, Hikouki. So we talked about hiragana, katakana, kanji, romaji. Here we have a sentence example in English that is, my name is Brian. The second one we have kanji, which is how it's normally written in Japan. Then we have the hiragana, then we have the romaji. And in Japanese, that is watashi no namae wa Brian desu. Looking at the hiragana and katakana in that third line, you would say, why don't they just use that? Why use kanji? Why make it more complex? Why use kanji? Well, that's because there are just way too many Japanese words, and if you're writing those words in hiragana, they would look the same and sound the same, so there wouldn't really be any way to tell them apart. So one written hiragana could have multiple different meanings. For instance, if we look at ame in its hiragana form, it would be pretty hard to distinguish what we mean by that, because ame could mean rain, or it could mean candy. So we have written kanji, we have these different characters, ame that represents rain, and then ame that represents candy. However, you could ask ame pronounced, just in spoken language, like how would you tell the difference? Well, if you're new to learning and speaking Japanese, a native Japanese person could probably tell what you're talking about by context. A lot of Japanese conversation is contextual. Sometimes subjects can be omitted from the conversation if it's clear that one is talking about a certain thing. So if it's raining outside and you say ame, they're going to know you mean rain. If you say ame when you're in a candy store or passing by a candy store, they're going to know that you mean candy. But besides that, there's the correct way to pronounce both of those, and it's through different pitches. So rain, you would say with a high pitch, and then me with a low pitch. And then candy, you would say with a low pitch, and then me with a high pitch. When just starting out learning Japanese, I wouldn't recommend being too concerned about pitch, because as I said, native speakers can understand what you're talking about, even if you don't get the pitch right. I would say focus on other aspects of the learning process and then come back to pitch later. And a quick tidbit on grammar and sentence structure order. Typically in English, it is subject, verb, object. In Japanese, it is subject, object, verb. So in this example here, we have watashi wa nihongo ga suki desu, which translates to I, Japanese language, like. And then I mentioned earlier in the video about particles. Wa and ga here are examples of particles. I'm not going to really go into particles too much. There's a couple different ones. No, ni. Basically, certain particles will connect the different words and then tell you how they connect. For instance, watashi no namae, like my name is, you're saying the name belongs to me. Ni, a lot of times is used for direction, like going this way or I'm going here. Ga's kind of used like when you're trying to single out information, so you're saying I like Japanese language as compared to like other languages. Sometimes if you were to say like watashi ga, I've heard that can come off as like arrogant, like you're saying, oh, I'm better. But that's really all I'm going to say about particles. I would definitely recommend looking that up, learning more about that. So I'll say a couple more things about Japanese in my closing remarks in a moment, but first I'll go over some of the apps and other websites, resources I've used in my language learning journey so far. Starting at the top left, the Write Japanese. I've been using that recently to help get better at writing Japanese, as I really haven't spent a whole lot of time with writing. Most of my time has been with understanding it when it's spoken and being able to speak it aloud, followed by reading. Then to the right, we have WordHippo, Google Translate, Romaji Desu, and Japandict. Good for finding out the meaning of words and translating different things. Romaji Desu, I will say, is really great because you put a kanji character in there and it will give you the hiragana for that kanji so you can know how to pronounce it. And to the right of that, we have Anki, which is what I first kind of started out using, and it's basically a spaced repetition, like flashcard program. We have Kaizen, which is what I've been using recently. Pretty much chats between you and a AI, though it is predefined text. The the app will say something to you, it'll show you the text and say it aloud, and then the app will give you a prompt that you could say, so you could read the prompt before you read it aloud, and you just kind of have a conversation like that, develop your reading skills, your listening skills, and your speaking skills. Really been loving that one. Learn Japanese with the exclamation point. Kind of just goes over like the hiragana, the katakana, and the different yun combinations. The two Dr. Moku apps are really good because they have the hiragana and katakana for the orange Dr. Moku and the kanji for the blue Dr. Moku. They're really good because they have mnemonics with them. So a certain hiragana character will pop up on the screen and it'll give you like a visual example of like the hiragana key. Oh, it's a key, as in unlock the door, key. And mnemonics can be really helpful with learning kanji as they're complex. So if you get that visual aid to help you remember, that helps out a lot. The Learn Japanese is kind of like a Duolingo. I guess I'd recommend Duolingo as well. Then you have Learn Kanji, which is probably the single most best Japanese learning app that I've experienced so far. I will say there's some problems with it. Certain texts aren't there, some audio files aren't there, or they're out of order. But overall, I would say it's great. It's got a lot packed into it. And then LinkQ is another app/web platform that was developed by a polyglot, somebody who speaks multiple languages. It is a membership. The free portion is really limited, but I would say it's a great app overall. It provides you with different articles to read and different stories so that it can make your language learning fun. You can click on different words and see the meaning that they have. And if we go left, we have Easy Japanese and Satori Reader. I haven't really used them, but I've been recommended them for developing your reading skills. So as I get a little bit better, I'm going to go towards those. And then to the left again, we have Preply, and I pronounce it Italki, which these are tutor services. Primarily I use Italki. I think I've only used Preply once, but you go on there, you hire a tutor, and there's not too much else to say about that. I will say it's, it can be expensive if you're doing it like straight from the beginning, because all those hours add up, but it will probably make you learn faster. So there's a trade-off there. And for my closing remarks, I will say that the JLPT is the Japanese Language Proficiency Test, and that starts out as 5 being the easiest, going down 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you could pass all that, you should be literate, you should be fluent. If you do happen to go onto YouTube and look up JLPT vocab list like myself, one thing I didn't know that I know now is that there is no official JLPT list. So you'll see JLPT 3 and be like 1,800 words, but it's just words that somebody added. And a note on kanji. There is a whole lot of kanji. If you learn a certain 1,000 kanji, you'll probably be able to read most things. However, there is the Joyo list of 2136 kanji, and that supposedly gives you like a 99% proficiency rating. And it seems typically college-educated people know anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 kanji, while to pass the most difficult kanji test, the Kanji Kinte, you have to know 6,355 kanji. So that is definitely a huge goal. That's definitely a lot to learn. I would recommend starting out with 10 kanji, going to 100 kanji, going to 250, going to 1,000, and then going up to that 2136 kanji, the Joyo. And if you know that, you're probably good. And then I will say, for an English-speaking person to learn Japanese, it's apparently one of the most time-consuming, one of the hardest languages to learn. It could take approximately 2 years of dedicated learning to be somewhat fluent in Japanese. It really all depends on the amount of effort you put in over whatever amount of time and then how you're learning. If you're using a tutor, you're probably going to learn faster than if you're trying to learn by yourself. If you're living in Japan, you're probably going to learn faster than if you're not. All in all, I would say just focus on learning, enjoying the learning process. Be consistent, but allow yourself to take breaks every once in a while. If you really are being consistent and spending a lot of time on it, you might get a little burnt out on your language learning journey. It's okay to take like a day off or a couple days off or a week. And even like according to one of my coworkers who's learning Japanese, he says if you spend multiple months not learning and then come back to learning Japanese, that you'd lose a lot of the bad habits that you were doing. Maybe the way you pronounced something. But thank you for watching, and good luck in your language learning. Bye bye.